Hello and welcome to today's episode. I am I am your I am your host, Diego, and today we are confronting a deeply troubling and urgent subject: the spiraling and anguish in Peru. We will talk about the rampant extortion plaguing many communities, the transporters strike sweeping across regions, the brutal killings of drivers, and the political storm culminating in the calls for the vacancy, the removal of President Dina Boluarte. Let me begin by setting the stage. Peru, a country with tremendous riches geographically, culturally, and historically, is now caught in a whirlpool of violence, social unrest, and political crisis. The threats of corruption, impunity, poverty, and, and disenchantment have woven a tapestry for fear and anger. The extortion crisis. In recent years, extortion in Peru has metastasized, whether in coastal cities, the Indian highlands or jungle communities. Business and individuals is increasingly find themselves paying for protection or facing dire threats. Criminal gangs, sometimes linked to organized crime networks, sometimes local power brokers, demand payments from small shopkeepers, truckers, farmers, transporters, public transport drivers, even homeowners. For many, refusing to pay is not an option. Threats escalate to arson, kidnapping, or violence against family members. The results are devastating. Families lose life saving, business shut down, communities live in constant fear. In rural areas of Peru, where state presence is weak, criminal networks exploit that vacuum. They impose their own rules and collect taxes in some province. They even define for whom a person eh, can can vote or which candidate must carry the network's support, turning extortion into a political weapon, the corruption of local officials, in the failure of police and judicial institutions to respond robustly have allowed these criminal networks to expand, to expand. One horrifying consequence: many truck drivers, especially those who transport goods across provinces, are prime targets. Their long routes, usually isolate, isolate, isolated roads, and valuable cargo make them vulnerable. Extortionists demands peaje, tolls, or rides at illegal checkpoints. If the driver resists, reprisals are lethal. Trucker associations in Peru have in recent months documented dozens of extortion incidents, kidnappings, and murders. Many drivers report that they must pay dozens, even hundreds, of extortion fees just to pass through certain regions. The burden is enormous, and when a driver refuses or cannot pay, the consequence can be fatal. This recent wave of violence and impunity has become one of the major grievances fueling the protests and strikes we see now across the country. The transporters strike. The extortion menace has pushed many transporters, both public and cargo transporters, to a breaking point. The strike by transporters is not just about wages, wages or fuel cost. It is a desperate demand for safety, for dignity, and above all, for the state to reclaim control. Cities and highways have faced dramatic ascents. Roads blocked by buses and trucks, fleets parked in plazas, public transport system is slow to a crawl. The strike spreads from region to region, paralyzing commerce, strangling supply chains, and fueling social tension. For many Peruvians, the transporters strike means they cannot go to work, cannot buy groceries, cannot access medical care easily. The social cost is immense. But the transporters, the choice is stark: to continue working under mortal threat or to stand down in protest. In many strike declarations, the transporters demand guarantees of protection against extortion and violence. The next one is the deployment of security force along high-risk routes. The next is suspension of illegal checkpoints. On the other hand, immediate investigation into attacks on drivers. And the last is compensation or insurance for families of victims. But the government's response have been erratic. In some places, security force have been deployed, but too late. In others, agreements are made only to be broken. The trust deficit between the people and the state and the state depends. Meanwhile, the paralysis of transport amplifies the suffering of regular citizens. Food, fuel, medicines, everything depends on transport. When transport stops, the lifeblood of daily life slows. The tension between the demands of the strikers and the needs of the public becomes more painful by the hour. The next point is the killings of drivers. PIRAF, the most tragic dimension of this crisis is a wave of violent deeds. Across Peru, media reports have documented the brutal killings of drivers, sometimes public bus drivers, sometimes cargo haulers, sometimes informal transport operators, whether en route at their terminals or even at home. Many have been murdered. Some vanished, leaving families in anguish and confusion. In some cases, the murders appear to be related to extortion networks punishing no compliancy. In others, local power struggle or criminal turf wars are suspected. The result is a climate of terror. Drivers and their families feel they are being squeezed from all sides. Criminals, sometimes complicit officials, and an indifferent or helpless state. In one province, a group of drivers were ambushed. Some were shot dead, others wounded. In another region, a driver was abducted and never see again, while his family received threats demanding ransom. These acts are not isolated. Isolated. They echo in communities across the country. The psychological effect is severe. Many drivers now travel in fear, increasing cost, armor, escort, longer detours, reducing schedule, or quitting altogether. The transport system productivity declines, but socially the message is even more disturbing. If you challenge these criminal actors, your life is at risk. Is at risk. Families demand justice. Communities demand protection, but too often the criminal networks act with impunity. Police investigations are slow or non-existent. Prosecutors are under-resourced or intimidated. Local authorities may be complicit or corrupt, and when the victims are poor or rural, their voices are drowned in silence and neglect. Into the maelstrom of violence and protest enters the political crisis. Dina Boluarte, who became president under contentious circumstances, faces mounting dissatisfaction from her handle of security, from social movements, and from frustrated citizens who perceive betrayal and negligence. The concept of vacancia, the impeachment or removal of a city president, is gaining traction among opposition parties, protest leaders, and civil society. The critics urge the Boluarte's government has failed in its basic duties. Failure to protect citizens. The epidemic of extortion and violence has escalated during her tenure. Critics urge her administration has not deployed effective strategies or sufficient resources to dismantle criminal networks or protect vulnerable transport routes. Mismanagement of protest. During socially explosive moments, the government's response has often been heavy-handed. There have been accusations of excessive use of force, human rights violations, and repressions of dissent. Broken promise and corruption. Promise that reform justice to strengthen institutions, to decentralize power. Many urge this remain unfulfilled. Allegations swear about corruption at various levels, and Boluarte is accused of being too close to stretched political interest. Lost the legitimacy. Public opinion polls suggest her approval ratings are plummeting. Massive protests, roadblocks, social unrest, they all point to a deep crisis of legitimacy. The opposition and the protest leaders now call for early elections, wholesale constitutional reform, or the complete removal of Boluarte. Whether Congress will approve of a vacancia motion is uncertain. The political alliance, even within the ruling party are factoring. But for many Peruvians, the vacancia is symbolic. It is a cry for change, for accountability, for a government that listens rather than repress. It is a demand that the state reclaim its social contract with citizens. Of course, vacating a president is not a cure in itself. The country must confront root problems: institutional weakness, corruption, inequality, impunity, and fractured governance. But removing Boluarte may open space for structural change or for more chaos. Let's step back and see how these crises, extortion, strike, killings, political collapse, are deeply interconnected. Institutional weakness and impunity. One root cause in that the police, prosecutors, and judiciary are often incapable or unwilling to confront criminal networks. Lack of resource, corruption, political interference, and dangerous working conditions limit their capacity. Geographic inequalities. Many extortion hotspots lie outside Lima, in provinces where the state historically has had limited reach. Marginalized communities, indigenous populations, zones, rural zones. These are places where criminal actors step in the vacuum. The next one is economic desperation. People struggle with poverty, unemployment, lack of opportunities. Criminal networks find fertile soil when people lack social mobility or hope. The next point is political fragmentation and instability. Peru has had multiple presidents in recent years, weak party systems, frequent crises. That instability undermines long-term planning, reforms, and institutional continuity. Next is corruption and capture. Some local officials or regional political actors may be in collusion with criminal networks, whether for personal gain or political influence. This corruption weakens the rule of law. Social alienation and distrust. Citizens feel disconnected from elites, frustrated by unfulfilled promise and alienated from national politics. Their trust in the state institutions has eroded when protests erupt. The response is often repression, which depends the rupture. Trust Thus, the crisis is not one-dimensional; it is systematic, and the urgency is real. Lives are lost, communities are destabilized. The social fabric is under threat. While the picture is grim, there are paths forward. Here are key measures and principles that could help Peru being to hell. Comprehensive anti-extortion strategy. The government must commit to a national campaign against extortion with clear units, coordination among police and prosecutors, special task forces, and budget allocation. a location, a location, mapping of high risk roads and hotspot zones with preventive deployment. Witness protection programs so victims and informants are safe. The next is transparent investigation into corruption or complicity within law enforcement. The steep step is protection and support for transporters and drivers. Government should guarantee safe passage or on major transport routes, create protect corridors, or even company convoys. Provide emergency funds or insurance for victims or families of slain drivers. Engage transport unions and dialogue, ensure their safety concerns are integrated into public policy. The next is judicial reform and institution strengthening, increase funding, training, and oversight of prosecutors and courts, establish independent anti-corruption agencies, remove political interference in appointments, speed up trials, reduce impunity, and set clear legal precedent. Political accountability and democratic renewal. If vacancy occurs or not, the government must link legitimacy with action, transparency in decision making, accountability for security failures, and inclusion of civil society voices are essential. Consider constitutional reform to reduce concentration of power, strengthen regional governments, and be policy security agencies. Organize new election of under fair, monitored conditions if needed. Social policies to reduce vulnerability. Investment in education, job creation, rural development, and infrastructure in neglected provinces strengthen local governance so communities have real voices and capacity. Programs for youth, giving alternatives to criminal recruitment. The government must open channels of communication with protest groups, unions, indigenous organizations, and local leaders. Create national forums for security and justice. And governance with citizens' oversight. The next is ensure reparations for victims of violence and recognition of suffering. And the last is international cooperation. Seek technical assistance, intelligence sharing, and training support from international partners experienced in combating organized crime. The next is monitor human rights condition through regional bodies. A.G. or Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. If Peru can pursue even parts of this agenda with sincerity, it may be to reverse the spiral of violence, restore citizen confidence, and stabilize governance. This crisis is not just a Peruvian problem. It is a reminder to all societies of how fragile the social contract can be when criminals gain power, when institutions fail, when people lose faith. The result is chaos. To all Peruvians listening, your voice matters. Your pain, your demands for justice, your protest, they are not fut- uh, futile. Keep speaking, keep organizing, demand accountability from your representative. Support the victims' families, create networks of solidarity, document abuses, use media, social platforms, art, and public forums as tools for resistance. To the authorities, do not respond only with repression or short-term appeasements. The solution must be structural, courageous, transparent, and enduring. The lives of drivers, the security of transporters, the dignity of communities, they are great responsibilities. The legitimacy of any administration depends on safeguarding its citizens. To the international community, watch closely, support human rights monitoring, offer expertise in anti-extortion and rule of law reforms, stay in solidarity with the vulnerable, pressure governments to be transparent and just. Finally, to all who care about justice, democracy, and human dignity, Peru's crisis demands more clarity. The path ahead is arduous, but the alternative is unthinkable. A breakdown of order, the, the entrenchment of criminal power, and the silencing of communities. Let this monologue be a small for heal of conscience. May it steer listeners into awareness, into empathy, into action. May it honor the drivers who died in the line of service, the transporters who strike for dignity, and the citizens demanding accountability. Thank you for listening. Until next time, this is Diego, keeping vigil through the airwave for truth, justice, and the resilience of Peru. Stay safe, stay alert, and keep the conversation alive.